Hi everyone, it's Tantacles, and this is the story of my attempt to make the hot girls of Final Fantasy X go fast. I'll only be using hot girls and hot girl Aeons, and while they'll be able to activate each other's abilities on the sphere grid, they'll be stuck with the stats from their own paths. And whenever hot girls aren't available, the sphere grid is banned. The full rules are in the Discridly-Do, so let's get spicy. At the outset of the game, there are no girls at all, so I named Tidus Tantacles to compensate. No relation to Tantacles. So we play with some balls, fight some actual Tantacles, and get sucked into this black hole. And after Tantacles fights a fish and learns to make fire, our first hot girl, Riku, who is drawn like a moth to the flame, finally offers her assistance. Riku, as a thief, has amazing speed and the ability to steal, but her use command, along with her overdrive, which we'll talk about later, makes her contribution to the team invaluable. Unfortunately, her physical attacks are pitiful, so I make sure to steal several grenades in the next few fights, and eventually we fight another set of Tantacles on this octopus. Now, the normal strategy in this battle is to use a pincer attack, which prevents the octopus from rushing you and doing a ton of damage. But unfortunately, we can't use Tantacles, so it's up to Riku to save the day. Fortunately, she starts with her mix available, and she does a solid 1000 damage right away. The octopus's Nautilus charge does do a lot of damage itself, but she's able to heal it off quickly and get another grenade in. We rinse and repeat, and it takes just 3 more grenades to defeat it. Unfortunately though, we now lose our one hot girl to a terrible boating accident, and we head on to Besaid. By the way, don't buy a boat. But after we grab the sigil for Yuna's ultimate weapon, which I'll talk about later, play with some balls, escape an attempt on Tantacles' life, and crash a temple rave, we get our first Aeon, Valefor. And Valefor is usable in this run because she's a girl. You can actually revisit her faith later in the game, and that's how we know. Oh, and she also has bird boobs, so we call her Kathy. It was my chat's idea, so please don't blame me. But because of this, I do get scolded by this lady. Stay away from the summoner! But we don't stay away from the summoner, and we finally have access to our final 2 hot girls of this run, Yuna and Lulu. Lulu is an evasion tank, and she gets a ton of black magic spells on her route. And while Yuna gets plenty of healing magic, she has some issues with her personal offense. Of course, she can summon Aeons to do her work for her, but by eventually giving her some of Lulu's black magic spells, we can get a lot more mileage out of her. And even more importantly, before I do anything else, I make sure to get Kathy's second overdrive, Energy Blast, from this beautiful doggy. And then we meet Kimahri, who attacks us. And because Tantacles has no extra stats, Kimahri hits pretty hard and takes him down. But he's not a girl, so who cares? Anyway, we then defeat the Blue Menace, and after a bird-on-bird fight, it's time for our first battle with Sin. And we're off to a great start, because I get distracted and accidentally attack with Tantacles. 2 deaths already. Wow. But at least I saved. So I kick this suitcase to let out my frustration, and I try again. But before that, can we talk about this very attractive boy nipple? Or can I only talk about the hot girls during this run? Okay, sorry, moving on. With regard to this Sin fight, this time the men stay in the background and Yuna summons her tit bird to help out. Unfortunately, while I have Kathy's overdrive available, I accidentally attack the Sin scales with it instead of Sin. Fortunately though, the Sin scales soon fill up my overdrive gauge again, and Kathy's overdrive does a delightful 1500 damage to Mr. Sin Shark, which doesn't kill, which means my blunder really cost me some time. The Sin scales then take Kathy down, and with a couple more fire spells from Lulu, Sin, who is truly the ultimate lumpy space princess, goes down. Wait, actually he attacks Kilika, destroying the homes of thousands of people, but there is a bright side to all of this. We get to see a hot girl dance. Okay, seriously for a moment, this scene is one of my favorites in the Final Fantasy series. While humans are constantly harming each other because of who they are and whom they love, Sin destroys indiscriminately, and in Spira, the enmity against Sin is the sole unifying force in the world. And while there are temporizing measures, Sin always comes back eventually to obliterate any hope the people have that they might lead full lives. And Yuna, separate from her potential to rid the world of Sin, plays an important role. She provides closure. Her sending causes the souls of the people of Spira to move on, and it helps those who are left behind accept the deaths of their loved ones. And ironically, the way Spira is constructed, that is the most important role of a summoner. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. However, I do wonder why Yuna can't use water spells natively, even though she can literally waterbend. Before we head on to the next boss, we have a little mini challenge to deal with. King Ochu can drop HP spheres, and if we overkill him, he can drop 2 of them. So I get Kathy's overdrive fully charged because that will overkill, and the first time I miscalculate how much damage it will do and it doesn't die after an overdrive, so I run away and try again. And the second time it drops MP spheres, but the third time I get super lucky and it drops 2 HP spheres. I'm not sure whom to use them on yet, so I'll save those for later. So we head to Kilika Temple, and on the way we encounter Sin Spawn Genois. Sin Spawn G. He has 2 hands that he uses to poke hot girls and a body that he uses to sigh because the hot girls won't make out with them. Fortunately though, his hands are weak to fire and Lulu makes quick work of them. The central unit starts out closed, but a few fire spells force it open, and I have Yuna overkill it with a Kathy overdrive just in case it drops something useful. And of course it doesn't, but at least it died. And then we recruit Ifrit, whom we name Buttsball. And again, you can blame my stream chat for these names. It is their fault. And by the way, if you want to watch me do these runs live, hit the subscriddly-doo button and also the bell diddly-doo to turn on notifiddly-doos. Oh golly, Miss Molly, I need new jokes. So we head back to the boat, learn the Jekt shot, and head to the Blitzball Stadium. But before we can kick balls around with the boys, we have to fight this ball machine. And unfortunately, because Yuna has been kidnapped, this battle belongs to Lulu alone. Fortunately though, she's no stranger to balls. She's just like me. Now normally the strategy in this battle is to have Lulu electrify the crane with her thunder magic and then have Tantacles use it to deal massive damage to the obliterator. But because we can't use men, that ain't gonna work. Now you might remember in my Tidus only run that this battle was awful. He just didn't have the defense to go up against this machine and got bodied almost immediately. However, Lulu's base defense is 3 higher than that of Tantacles, so with her 780 HP, she's able to survive Obliterator's ultimate attack, Blitzball Rush, with more than half of her HP. And because items are faster to use than attacks, all we have to do is cast Thunder, wait for her to get 2 turns in a row when she heals, and then use one of those 2 turns to attack the Obliterator. The only danger is that we might run out of high potions, but we don't, and after just a few more Thunder attacks, Lulu takes down the Obliterator, proving that she's a strong, independent woman who don't need no balls. And we let our boys play with balls now. And this Blitzball match honestly goes amazing. I have a great strategy for the first Blitzball game, and if you want to see it, I'll link the stream in which I played in the Discriddly-Do. But the result is that I win 4-1 and I get a Strength Sphere, which will be very useful later. So we fight some mandatory battles with the boys, and we encounter one of the most misunderstood scenes in Final Fantasy X, the laughing scene. Yuna laughs to calm the pain she feels at the knowledge of her own impending death, and Tantacles laughs because he's Tantacles. Ha ha ha, isn't laughing so fun? We next win the battle against Belgamine, and she gives us a juicy piece of armor for Yuna, the Echo Ring. She's now immune to silence and she gets some extra HP, which will be quite useful for the Chocobo Eater. We haven't been grinding much, so this battle is a little bit of a challenge. Our goal is to push it off the cliff. If you deal 1200 damage, Chocobo Eater falls down, and then if you deal another 500, it gets pushed back. However, when he's not knocked down, he can push the party back himself and send them careening off a cliff, which, while a loss, does not result in a game over. You just don't get the rewards for winning. So I start off this battle with Lulu's Fury, which only does about 600 damage, and it's clear that won't be enough to knock him down. Another fire spell does 300 more, and one more knocks him down. From here, I summon Kathy, who uses her superior magic stat to knock him back with 2 fire spells. She knocks him down again with 2 more fire spells, but he gets back up and takes her down before she can knock him back. And then he knocks us back. And from here, the battle is kind of a disaster. I do manage to knock him down once more, but he's too fast and gets up before I can pummel him. And from there, we get pushed to the edge of the cliff and then off of it. And that felt like a good time to say goodnight. I'd been streaming for over 6 hours, so I packed it up and I went to bed. But the next day, I was ready to rendezvous with my main man, Seymour, who lets us through the barricade. Now, if only he would let me into his heart. We head through Mushroom Rock Road, in which the encounter rate is way too high, a complaint that I have about this entire game. At its end, though, the Crusaders, a militant organization of Spira, have captured some Sin Spawn. They plan to torture it until Sin comes so they can blast it with a cannon. But things don't go exactly to plan, and we have to fight Sin Spawn Gui. And a girls-only party focusing on magic has quite an advantage here. Normally, its 2 fins block any attacks against its body, but it won't block magic, so Lulu's spells are at full power. And in my Tidus-only run, he couldn't hit the head, meaning he just had to tank its powerful attacks and poison status. But Lulu, with her magic, can can hit the head, which makes this battle a lot more easy to survive. I ultimately summon Kathy to get some extra damage with a double overdrive, but her attacks don't kill, and she ultimately goes down to a physical attack. This is really bad, and we'll come back to why in just a minute. But the rest of the battle, which is somewhat slow going, isn't too bad. Lulu eventually burns this Sin spawn to death, but unfortunately it's not over, because Sin ultimately arrives to pick up its children from Crusader Daycare and in the process destroys the entire organization. So now it's up to Yuna to take out what remains of Sin spawn Gui. But unfortunately, with Kathy dead, Yuna has no way to deal damage to Sin spawn. So given that there's no way to win, I reset and add 1 to my death count, and I come out of this experience a little bit wiser. Before I try again, I grind a little bit until we get the level 2 magics, and I bring Yuna over to Lulu's grid so she can learn them as well. Now Yuna actually has some good damage potential, actually more than Lulu since her magic and agility stats are higher. So we restart the fight, and I have a plan here. I do a ton of damage with Lulu and Yuna, but midway through the battle, I summon Kathy with Yuna's overdrive. This fully charges her overdrive bar, and then I immediately dismiss her. Perfect plan, right? Well, we get through the battle pretty quickly, watch Sin blast some folks, and then fight Sin spawn Gui again. I have Yuna destroy the head and charge up her own overdrive bar, but then I have a terrible realization.
Oh, Kathy has no... I didn't pull up Kathy's overdrive?
If you dismiss an Aeon after filling its overdrive with Yuna's overdrive, that charge goes away. So instead of summoning Kathy with 2 overdrives, she now only has 1. And that's honestly fine, but it makes me sad since I wasted Yuna's initial overdrive bar. Fortunately though, we're able to boost up Kathy to a 2nd overdrive, and that bolus of a blast is enough to end this Mega Worm. We then walk to the Jose Temple, acquire the beautiful horsey Ixion, whom we name Not a Boat because he is not a boat, and we head down to the Moonflow. We then have our 2nd encounter with Belgamine, which we lose by an impressive margin, but she still gives us the prize for the fight, the Summoner's Soul, and now we can teach our Aeon's abilities. Unfortunately, there's not really a great ability I can teach her right now, so I shelve that idea for later. We head to the Moonflow, we grab a Death Touch weapon for Lulu, which will come in very handy as that weapon is very overpowered, and Yuna gets kidnapped. So we fight another robot, but unfortunately only boys are available for water battles at this time. I have no sphere levels on the boys, and I am not the Giga Chad gamer that I thought I was, so I die. But the 2nd time around, I figure it out. I talk more about this battle, but there are no hot girls in it, so I really don't care. But you know who is a girl? Riku. And I care an awful lot about her. She's gonna change our game. Her agility is off the charts, and her stealing and item throwing, not to mention her overdrive, will be extremely useful. And within a minute, she steals 2 bomb cores, and we finally have something useful to teach to Kathy, Fyra. And even more importantly, we get Riku's customization ability, which will be essential to completing this run. But before we get to use it, Seymour asks Yuna to marry him, which doesn't make much sense because number 1, Yuna is a strong independent woman who don't need no man, and number 2, because Seymour is mine. My stance on this has not changed. He's mine. I do take a moment to see if I can marry Lulu instead, and she says she'll add me to her list. Nice. We head through the Thunder Plains at this point, which seems like a good time to talk about one of the other rules in this run. If you watched my beat Final Fantasy VIII with girls only, you know that hot girls get what they want. And that's why I made it my mission to get Selphia Train. In Final Fantasy X though, what the girls want is their ultimate weapons, which is why as part of this run, I'll be getting the ultimate weapon for every hot girl. And Lulu happens to have a component of her ultimate weapon in the Thunder Plains. But since I don't feel like dodging lightning bolts right now, we're gonna come back to that later. We head into Macalania Forest, and while there, I teach Yuna the steal and use abilities from Riku's track, which will be very important very soon. But for now, we have a huge issue with more balls, because even though Lulu may be an expert in balls, this water ball is too big for her to handle alone. We're gonna need the help of 3 hot girls if we want to drain this big wet ball. This particular ball changes its weakness periodically, and it's always weak against the opposite of the element it casts. So if it casts water, it's weak against thunder, fire, weak against ice, and so on. And with Yuna and Lulu having all of the 2nd level spells, we're able to progress through this battle very quickly. Spheromorph's most powerful attack takes away a flat 50% of everyone's HP, but otherwise it only attacks 1 party member at a time. That makes it pretty easy to heal up, and ultimately it's Yuna who waterboards this ball into submission. But her newfound power makes her the next target of the Blue Brigade, who whisks her off to Macalania Temple. But not before she briefly rejoins the party to help us fight this saucy robot. The hot girls can't use magic because of the floaty negator bot, so Riku and Yuna Yuna take it down with the help of 2 smoke bombs. It does have some powerful attacks, but like the Spheromorph, it generally only attacks one hot girl at a time, so keeping up with its damage output isn't too bad. Riku mixes 2 Electro Marbles together, doing about a third of the robot's health, and the other 2 ladies bear down with some Thunder Magic. The one thing that worries me though is the countdown to Mana Beam, but funny enough, the Negator not only stops my party from casting magic, but also stops the big robot from doing it. So like many of our favorite problematic celebrities, the Mana Beam is cancelled. And once we take down the Negator a second time, I use a Lulu Fury and summon Kathy, who overkills the robot with her Energy Blast. Better late than metal, I always say. But as we head into Makalania Temple, another challenger approaches, Seymour. And this fight has 3 phases. In the first phase, Seymour has 2 goons who cast status effects on the party. However, they're both vulnerable to Petrify, and I managed to steal some Petrify grenades from enemies with Riku earlier, so they are dispatched almost immediately. And Seymour, while he's immune to Petrify, can be poisoned. Poison is an incredibly powerful status effect in this game. In many boss fights, it allows you to just sit back and heal while the bosses destroy themselves. And once Seymour's first phase rots away, he summons Anima, who presents some problems. The first is Paine, which is immediate death for any hot girls, and in this case, Lulu is the first victim. But after she's revived, I have Yuna summon her new as of yet unnamed hot girl, who is actually more icy hot. She still takes a bunch of damage from Paine, but she manages to unload 2 overdrives into Anima and shield my femme fatales from her overdrive. And after just a few more spells, Anima goes down and brings us into Seymour's third phase. In this phase, he uses spells twice, and those spells will immediately take down the hot girls they miss. And I misplay here. I have Riku use the Steel Command, and Seymour immediately takes down both her and Lulu with Blazara. I revive both, but on the next 4 consecutive turns, he continues to massacre my maidens. I mix a Super Mighty Guard with Riku, however, he ultimately takes both her and Yuna down. He gets another double spell in immediately, so my girls are no more. Their vibrant flames extinguished by my husband. Maybe he was just killing them to get to me, and I get it, men do that for me. But given that it's been another 6-hour stream, I succumb to Seymour's advances and let him have his way with me. Okay, I think I actually got some pizza instead because I don't make out with murderers. The next day though, I make it my mission to take him out. Not for pizza, I mean I'm gonna kill him. The first phase starts as it did before, with a Petrify grenade and some patience. I poison Seymour, have Yuna cast a bunch of null spells, and then I head into the battle with Anima. This time, Icy Hot Lady starts off the battle, and I use her black magic to heal herself. I then use her overdrive twice, and then, as before, Anima takes her out with her own. Anima does manage to kill Yuna at this point, but she's quickly revived. And the next turn, I'm able to take her out with some magic. And that brings us to Seymour's third phase. I have to be honest, losing last time was pretty stupid. Seymour uses his spells in the same order every single time: ice, lightning, water, and then fire. So Yuna's null spells can make the party basically invincible, and Seymour dies, kinda, until he gets saved by his attendant/accomplice Trommel. But as a consolation prize, we get to name our new Aeon loin steak after one of my viewers, and then we're stuck in the Makalania Temple because Tantacles can't jump. Dang. So we finish the temple puzzle, fight off the Blue Man group, and get assaulted by an ogre. We start by stealing from the 2 Guados so they can't heal, and then we see the true power of a berserked ogre. He does about 3 times Riku's maximum HP with 1 punch. Fortunately though, he's vulnerable to sleep, and a sleeping powder means it's lights out. His goons buff him as they fall, but since magic won't wake him, this battle is pretty straightforward. Basically, if we can keep him asleep the whole time, he'll go down with no trouble. So with the help of Kathy's overdrive and another sleep powder, Umaro 2.0 gets roasted, and he punches the ice to send us to the bottom of the sea. And then Sin sends us to the desert for some reason. In reforming our party, we first collect Lulu in the zoo battle, and then Riku in the mid-desert. I use Lulu's instant death doll to take out the 3 Sandragoras, one of which provides 2 extremely useful teleport spheres, and then we head to home where there seems to be a problem with an annoying tongue. But there's a second problem, which is these chimeras and the Guado. One of them confuses Lulu, who hits Riku with her deathly doll, knocking her out, and then Lulu gets water blasted to death. We should cancel these hot girl haters. And I do. I go back a second time, Lulu takes out the confusing one first, and then uses Dolly to take out the chimeras. Seriously, giving her a death touch weapon this early in the game is extremely overpowered. The other challenges here aren't too bad, and then we get to what is unequivocally my favorite cutscene in the game. I plan to talk more in depth about this, but Riku is my favorite character. While the other party members skirt around the topic of the final summoning, as well as Yuna's ultimate demise, Riku faces the truth without hesitation. Now, perhaps this is because she doesn't know Yuna as well as the others, so the thought of her death is less painful. Perhaps it's because she's less detached from Yevon. Perhaps the others have already tried to convince Yuna, and Yuna just said, I'm gonna do it, so they've accepted it. But maybe, and this is my theory, maybe it's that she herself is part of a Spearin race that faces extermination. Presumably, she's seen some of her closest friends and maybe even her family die, and the futility of Yuna's death and the willingness of everyone else around her to push her towards it, despite knowing that sin will always return, begs the question, should we sacrifice one for the well-being of many? What if that well-being is only temporary? Does that change the equation? She and the Albed have decided that no, it's never okay. Even if there's a chance that sin will never come back, no one should have their life cut short. Well, that's enough of that. I'm planning an iceberg series soon, and hit me with a subscribedly-do if this topic interests you. But you know what does interest me? Weddings. Specifically, crashing them. Specifically, crashing weddings that are happening between some random hot girl and my man. But I guess we should fight Evray first. And at this point in writing the script, I started drinking a little, so get ready for some stupid, because there are no rewrites and I am ready for anything. Yeah. I don't like Evray because he made my Tidus run hell, so I want to destroy him so hard. I start off with a super mighty G, and then I have Lulu cast Reflex to get her evasion up. Evray is also vulnerable to blind, so I cast that for extra security. The number of status effects that bosses are weak against in this game is wild. Blinding disables its physical attacks, and its poison breath does very little, particularly since one Albed potion cures both the poison and the damage from the attack instantly. He does petrify Riku at one point, but honestly, this battle is pretty easy up until the point where Evray casts haste on itself. His swooping scythe fails because he's blinded, and honestly, most of his other attacks also fail because he's blinded. Literally having two underleveled hot girls makes this battle extremely easy. And now we get to crash a wedding. The soldiers here are dangerous because if I die to them, I have to fight Evray again, but because we have sleep powder, the humans here are disabled and taken out almost immediately. And then Yuna flies away. We get Bahamut, whom we name Tiamat, and we head on to the Via Purifico. And by that I mean we get thrown in. We grab Lulu and we head through to find Daddy Orin, whom all the straight men on my channel would definitely sleep with, don't lie, and we fight Isaru with our Aeons. Kathy, unfortunately, is no match for Usaru's Ifrit, and she goes down after a valiant overdrive proc. Loinstake, though, is far more robust. She comes pre-built with Null Blaze, which means none of Ifrit's fire spells hit her. And given that Kathy already damaged him, he goes down extremely quickly. His valefor, similarly, is not a big deal. Loinstake's Blazara spell is used only to heal her, and she's able to get an overdrive and a few physical attacks to take out this behemoth of a bird. I also managed to save her overdrive for the fight with Isaru's Bahamut. Loinstake pulls off a Meru and starts with the Diamond Dust, and fortunately, all that Bahamut does is boost up its overdrive, and that means that once it comes, we can shield to negate almost all of its damage. He gets off a total of 4 overdrives, and Loinstake ends the battle with her overdrive gauge full, which I'm sure will be useful for another battle very soon. And then we fight a watery, wet Evray refight, but you know, that's not really a problem. He does use Stone Gaze with Riku on his first turn, threatening to send me back to the Shadow Realm, but fortunately the status is unsuccessful. So one Phoenix down takes away half of its health. It uses Photon Ray, which could kill her, but fortunately does not, and a second Phoenix down sinks this salty serpent. And now it's time to fight Seymour, the remix, the first remix. Unfortunately, this battle forces Tantacles and Kimahri into the party, and both are immediately taken down by 2 Blazaras from Seymour, meaning I can't switch them out. And soon after, Seymour casts 2 Wateras on Yuna, and I die. The second time goes a little bit better, and I'm able to get Riku into the battle, but ultimately Tantacles dies, and I can't get him switched out, and Yuna and Riku can't keep up with Seymour's offense. The third time starts the same way, with Seymour killing Kimahri and Tantacles. This time, though, I use a Mega Phoenix, reviving them both instantly. On his second attack, though, he only manages to kill Tantacles, so Kimahri gets to switch out to Riku, and Yuna's null spells mean that both Riku and Yuna take no damage from Seymour's spells, which follow a similar pattern like they did in the last fight. I do finally get Tantacles revived, and with Null Frost, he takes no damage from Seymour's attacks, meaning he can finally switch out to Lulu. I eventually summon Loinstake, who with a full overdrive gauge is able to do about 14,000 damage, 9,999 to the main body, and then 4,000 to Mortiorcus, who drains the same amount from Seymour. He banishes her, and Seymour's flare attack doesn't kill Riku, which means the battle is not going to be that difficult from here on out. And in fact, it isn't. He ultimately goes down to an overdrive from Lulu, and I'm pretty sure he's not coming back. Tell me if I'm wrong. And now Yuna and Tantacles rehydrate. She's sad, he apologizes, the scene is iconic, and for some reason, she likes him. You can do better, Yuna. Stay away from the summoner! I mean, don't marry Seymour, he's a dick, but maybe steal Bartello from Donna, because she doesn't deserve him. We head through the calm lands, train a chocobo since we'll need it to get Yuna's weapon, grab a cloudy mirror in a chocobo race, and head to Mount Gagazet. But a big robot stands in our way. And once again, status effects really change the course of the battle. This giant robot basically has two attacks. He smashes you and he shoots you. If he shoots you, it's unblockable and does 50% of your health, and if he smashes, it kills. But he's vulnerable to blind, which stops all smashing. So I use a smoke bomb to start, and while it eventually wears off and a couple girls get smashed, the battle is ultimately somewhat of a nothing burger and gets taken down by black magic. And I make a teensy little mistake here. The next section, Mount Gagazet, has a ridiculously high random encounter rate. However, with a no encounters weapon, I could literally just avoid that. You can get one by fighting ghosts in the sealed temple. It's a low drop rate, but it definitely would have saved some time. I could have just cruised right through. But in any case, the next challenge is Kamari's battle with his two Ronso playmates. This battle is unlosable as long as you just keep using Lancet, and that's exactly what I do. So after an hour of going through Mount Gagazet and getting into a million battles, getting lost, going backwards for 10 minutes, and then finally reaching the top of the hill, it's finally time for what I think is the hardest battle in the game, Seymour Flux. And just for fun, every time I die, I have to watch this cutscene again. Tell me once more why there are no skippable cutscenes in this remaster. Why does the PC get them, but the PS5 version doesn't? Okay, rant over. In the first phase, Seymour uses Lance of Atrophy followed by Full Life, which immediately takes out a character. And on his second cast of it, I realized that I forgot to get Holy Waters. Deja vu from the Tidus only run. However, with 3 characters, I can easily revive anyone who dies, so that's not too bad. Unfortunately though, Seymour next uses Cross Cleave, which attacks all characters, and only Riku survives with 28 HP. Seymour immediately gets off another Lance of Atrophy, and I die. So I go back to grab some more Holy Waters, and we head into the fight a second time. I start by mixing a Super Mighty G with Riku in the hope that it will help my girl survive against Seymour's Cross Cleave. It also gives haste, which is hugely helpful. Now, at least one party member will always get a turn in between Lance of Atrophy and Full Life, and they can cure off the zombie status. Seymour is also vulnerable to poison, so I have Riku use a Poison Fang to get some chip damage on him. After a few black magic spells, Seymour casts Protect on himself, and he also dispels my character's buffs. I recast Protect on Riku and Yuna, and I have Lulu defend against the incoming Cross Cleave, and it does not kill. He then casts Reflect on himself, and I go into Loinstake, who uses her overdrive to take down 13,000 HP, 10,000 from Seymour, and another 3,000 from Mortiorcus, and gets summarily dismissed. But this ploy buys some time for Riku to use a Purifying Salt, which removes Seymour's Reflect, and now allows the girls to use their magic. Seymour also casts Flare on himself with the intent of reflecting it towards one of my girls, but that plan fails, and he enters the third phase, readying his annihilation with Mortiorcus, and this attack completely destroys me. My third try goes similarly, but this time I summon Shiva to take total annihilation, but instead of casting it, Seymour just dismisses her after her overdrive. He then immediately casts total annihilation, and things are looking pretty grim, but Yuna survives with just 25 HP. But it's not over, because now he casts Flare, but he casts it on himself, and that, along with the poison I inflicted earlier, takes him out. And this battle being done is a relief. Not only was it hard, but I really need Seymour to go away, because I'm tired of him. Anyway, the next challenge is Sanctuary Keeper. He immediately starts out by casting Photon Wings, which confuses Lulu and Riku and puts Yuna to sleep. Riku hits herself out of it, and Yuna dies to a claw attack. After some healing, a failed attack by Lulu, and another claw swipe, I use a remedy on Lulu and revive Yuna. I next get up a Super Mighty Guard, and I realize that this boss too is poisonable. So I use Lulu's bio attack, and now we have some good passive damage going, except he uses Asuna on himself, negating that plan. I use a Poison Fang with Riku to poison him again though, and he does not use Asuna this time. Huge. I mean, he does it again like 5 turns later, but he hasn't cured himself yet. So maybe the Asuna is taking the place of Curaga in his attack pattern. I also max out Evasion with Reflex in the hope that I can avoid his magic attacks, though in hindsight, I should have just tried to blind him. Anyway, now that he's not poisoned, he uses Curaga, and I ultimately use a Star Curtain to cast Reflect on him. I also cast Reflect on Lulu so I can still use magic effectively. He ultimately casts Curaga on himself again, but that gets reflected onto Yuna. I ultimately poison poison him again by casting Bio on Lulu, which she reflects. But now he's wizened up, and he casts Asuna on Lulu to reflect it back onto himself. So I guess old dogs can learn new tricks. He also then reflects Regen onto himself, which is a pretty nasty trick, but I dispel it and we are getting closer to the end. After a few more spells, I summon Loinstake, who finishes him off and dusts him away. And now on to Xanarkand, where we listen to Tantacles tell us that this is his story. But it's not his story. This is the story of 3 hot girls. And those hot girls now have to play some Tetris and fight Spectral Keeper. This boss's main mechanics are counterattacks, which hit all 3 characters on the spaces in front of him, and mines, which will immediately kill any character stuck on them. And that means there's an easy solution to this battle: Lulu. Her evasion is pretty amazing, and it means that none of his counterattacks will hit him, for the most part. So my strategy is to use Reflex and Luck to boost up her evasion, and there's a good chance she'll tank everything it throws at us. Now, this strategy isn't perfect. The boss can also cause the Berserk status, and my only character with Berserk resistance is Riku. So Yuna gets Berserked and she gets killed with a counterattack, and then she gets stuck on a mine, which kills her again. But after that, the RNG goes far more in my favor. For some reason, Spectral Keeper starts focusing its attacks solely on Lulu, which means the girls head to Pound Town and we head on to fight famed zombie bikini woman Yunalesca. And while I usually think women should support each other, in this case, I'm completely okay with them bashing her head in. But before that, let's just talk about Yuna for a second. In Final Fantasy X, Yuna is 16. I don't know about you, but when I was 16, I was a little bit of a class clown, but ultimately respected my teachers and sometimes found it hard to truly rebel. But then little 16-year-old me met Yuna. Yuna sees massive injustice, and she is willing to call out the literal progenitor of the faith, the one responsible for creating the Church of Yevon and the final summoning, a figure of ultimate authority in Spira, and say, "No way, Jose. I'm gonna tear down this entire religion because it's wrong." And god damn, that had an influence on me. I question everything now. And I'm not gonna dig deep into current events here, but there are definitely some parallels. So think about what you truly know, think about where your information is coming from, and always question both sides in a dispute. No controversial statement of facts should ever go unexamined, and if someone tells you to shut up and sit down, you need to stand up and scream louder. Anyway, Yunalesca's first phase, as you might expect, is not a problem. She counteracts with silence when magic is cast, and she can do some HP drain. But phase 2 is where things get interesting. Yunalesca now makes a concerted effort to zombify all of my characters, and she also casts full life on them in an attempt to destroy them. However, this phase's weakness is that it can only hurt one character at a time. That means that I can just revive anyone who dies, and their zombie status is immediately rectified. But we eventually head into phase 3. This phase always starts off by casting Megadeth, so I let her cast Hellbiter on all 3 party members before I finish off phase 2. That way they'll be immune to death. But soon after, Yunalesca casts a devastating Mind Blast, which finishes off Yuna and Lulu. And unfortunately, I left Riku equipped with her Stone Touch weapon, and she attacks herself and gets petrified, meaning it's time to try again. But not that night, as this stream had already gone on for 8.5 hours, meaning I also fell victim to Mind Blast. But the next day, I head into voice chat with my Discord to try again, which you should join using the link and the Discridly-do. The first phase goes the same. The second phase ends with Lulu somehow resisting zombies, so she goes down to the third phase's Megadeth, but she's quickly revived, and Yunalesca casts Curaga on the non-zombified Lulu to bring her back to full health. And then I cure Yuna's zombie status, and Yunalesca casts Curaga on her as well. Mind Blast confuses Riku and Lulu, but Yuna gets the first turn and heals them. And I would love to extend this video by telling you this battle went terribly and I suffered, but it didn't. I use my Mega Phoenixes liberally, keep as many people zombified as I can, and I get pretty lucky with Mind Blast RNG. And I let Loinstake come in to cast a Diamond Dust and get the overkill. Woo! So we're in the end game, and now it's time to get the girls what they want. Their ultimate weapons. I got the Cloudy Mirror a bit earlier, and I take it to Macalania Woods, where I upgrade it into the Celestial Mirror. My next order of business is Uni's weapon. To get this, I need to do all the things listed right here, and capturing is one of the harder tasks I need to complete. The team strength stat is abysmal, so I plan to rely on Petrify to make this happen. I head to the Jose High Road, and there I grab some Petrify grenades and I put Stone Touch onto Riku's capture weapon. weapon that will insta-kill and capture enemies if it activates. Then I head back to the Calm Land to capture all the monsters there, and that gives us Yuna's ultimate weapon, Nirvana. And because we captured all the monsters in the Jose High Road, we are gifted 99 Petrify grenades. And that means that I can put Stoneproof on Riku's armor and we head to the Baj Temple. Here we fight Gioscano, and because Riku has Stoneproof, this battle is a lot easier. We start by poisoning Gioscano, yet another enemy who is vulnerable to this powerful status effect. And Riku, with her evade and counter weapon that I created earlier, is having zero issues. Maybe I didn't need Stoneproof after all. So I have her mixed quartet of 9999, which makes all of her attacks do 9999 damage, and then she immediately gets swallowed up and spit out, leaving her with 1 HP. But she heals and finishes off this beast with a lightning gem. Now, Riku is undoubtedly the most powerful character in this game because of this overpowered mix, but I decided that at this point I would not use it. Doing 9999 damage is completely game-breaking. I think this makes things a bit more interesting and will let you see a little bit more suffering. Now, to get Anima, the Aeon of this temple, I have to activate all of these statues, but they only activate if I have all of the destruction spheres from every temple. And unfortunately, I forgot to get the destruction sphere from Xanarkin's temple. So we head back to the Land of the Squares, grab the treasure, and return to Baj Temple where we meet Anima. And that's Seymour's mother and definitely a hot girl, so we name her Mommy. We then head to the Cavern of the Stolen Faith to grab our final Aeon, Yojimbo. And there, I steal from a magic pot who jets to the moon and explodes, and I die. But I head back in and even manage to capture a ghost who will be useful for later. The fight with Yojimbo was meant to be done after our first visit to the Calm Lands, but because we're now overleveled, it's a lot easier and he goes down in no time at all, which means we pay him off to join our team, and we now have all the Aeons we need to get Yuna's sigil. Oh, we also name him Yohimbo. Before we do that, though, we have some other business to take care of. We fight some ghosts in the arena to get a no-encounter weapon, and it only takes about 10 tries to get Lulu's Peaceful Bangle. In the process, we also gain enough AP for Lulu and Yuna to earn Double Cast, which will basically put their magic damage on steroids. And now that we have our no-encounter bangle, it's time for the worst part of this challenge, the Thunder Plains. I have to dodge 200 lightning bolts in a row. I did this once as a child, but I never had the patience to try again. Until now. Fortunately, there's a crater that you can use that will always give you a lightning bolt strike right when you run into it, and the timing is quite jaharenerous. You just have to push the X button right when you run in, and you get the dodge every time. Now, it takes a few tries, but once I get in the rhythm, it's only a matter of time before I've dodged 200 and I head to claim my prize. And the prizes are pretty effing amazing. 3 strength spheres for Riku, 3 HP spheres for I don't know who yet, and Lulu's Venus sigil. I then head back to Baj Temple to grab the Onion Knight weapon for Lulu, and I also grab the Venus crest in a chest in Guadosalam's Farplane. That means that Lulu's weapon is now complete. Now on to Riku. I grabbed Riku's God Hand as well as her Mercury crest earlier, so now it's time for the Cactuar side quest. With my no-encounter armor, this too is pretty easy. I'm able to get 8 out of 9 of the Cactuar spheres, which means I get a friend sphere in addition to Riku's Mercury sigil. 2 weapons down and 1 to go, which means now it's time to head back to the Calm Lands and fight Belgamina. I use Mommy to demolish her first 6 Aeons, and Loinstake is able to mostly delete Belgamina's copy of Mommy. However, she gets taken out by an overdrive and a couple of consecutive pain spells. Kathy does the rest, and we have one final task to deal with before we get our final Aeon, no pun intended. I capture every single monster in Mount Gagazet, dying to a couple of fishy fish in the process, and that yields the Blossom Crown. After we use that, Yuna obtains the Magus sisters, whom we name Twirly, Whirly, and Girly, and we fight Belgamine's version of them. Mommy's overdrive immediately takes down Girly, and the other 2 eventually succumb to her pain as well. So Belgamine gets sent away, yields the Moon Sigil to Yuna, and we head back to Makalana Nania, where we upgrade all 3 weapons. Our hot girls now have what they want, and now they can save the world. So Maester Micah sends himself off. This little kid tells us what to do. Tantacles rudely destroys one of Yuna's belongings, and we start the fight with Sin's shell. Because our main damage sources are magic, we can hit him from afar, and we aren't in much danger in the fight with Sin's arms. They go down pretty quickly to a bunch of double-casted elemental spells. The fight with the core and Sin spawn Janae is also pretty uneventful. The Tantacles monster is taken down by a double cast of Fyraga from Yuna, and that leaves the core wide open to attack. And after a few more double casts, the core also goes down. Just one more fight to go until we can head inside. And this is the one I was a little worried about. I have to defeat Sin before its overdrive gauge fills, or it destroys the ship and I automatically die. But the funny thing is, with the girls all decked out with their best abilities and best gear, their damage output is pretty amazing. The worst Sin can do is confuse my characters, but he only manages to confuse Riku one time before these luscious lasses dole out lashes. And speaking of men with beautiful hair around their eyes, the next fight is with Seymour. God, I'm tired of him. Thank God it's the last one, because I no longer care that he's hot. I just want him to go away. I haste Yuna with a chocobo feather, and Seymour's 4 fire spells don't manage to take anyone out. Yuna and Riku both use a mega potion to get everyone back to normal, and then we start in with our spells. Of course, I didn't realize that he absorbs fire in this phase, but I recover with a double Bazaga from Yuna next. After Seymour dispels my buffs, Riku mixes a super mighty G to protect from the big PP damage that's coming next, an Ultima spell. And with these protections, only Riku dies, and she is quickly revived by Yuna. Another mega potion brings everyone back to full health, and with a few more spells, Seymour is defeated, never to pollute my game again with his beautiful body. Until the next run, of course. And there's just one more battle left, the fight with Braska's final Aeon. So do me a favor. If you're enjoying this video, stop handsy ogres from eating chocobos by hitting the subscribe button. Only you can prevent unwarranted yellow bird deaths. Before we shot this game into oblivion, though, here's a list of all of the mistakes that I made in this run. If you think of something else, let me know in the comments, because you're going to anyway. Whatever. So now we're on to Braska's final Aeon, and I have one last thing to do before we can fight him. Lulu and Yuna need to learn their final spell of the game, Flare. I also make sure everyone has stone-proof armor, and now it's time to blitz. Like most final fights in Final Fantasy, this is a multi-phase final fight, and the first phase, while not the hardest in terms of damage, is the most tricky. Once again, the game places Tantacles, Auron, and Yuna in the party, completely disregarding my chosen party of hot girls. I understood that they did this for story reasons because I'm not obtuse, but I still hate it. Let's get real. I'm gonna suffer on this fight. I start by hasting Yuna, and fortunately, Jecht casts Jecht Beam on her, meaning she survives it handily. And then she goes after the booster pagodas to prevent Jecht's overdrive. Jecht then kills Tantacles, I revive him, and then Riku gets the switch in for Auron. She hastes herself, Yuna does some more damage with dual flare, and a few moments later, I can switch out Tantacles for Lulu, and we finally have only hot girls in our party. Yes! Riku casts Super Mighty G, and the fight is now truly begun. Jecht's overdrive is now ready though, but the first phase overdrive just does some mediocre physical damage and inflicts the zombie status, and Yuna can easily heal off everything that he's inflicted on her, and we keep going to town. Phase 2, the sword phase, starts soon after, and I continue to dual flare, attack the pagodas, and use shining gems with Riku whenever she's not healing with mega potions. But the big obstacle of this run approaches, Jecht's overdrive, the ultimate Jecht shot. And while Lulu certainly is adept at handling balls, this ball is too big for her to handle, even with the help of 2 other girls, and I die. Let the suffering begin. Lord help me. The second time, I managed to get Tantacles out of the battle first, but getting Auron out of there takes forever. But eventually Lulu does come in, and we get to the second phase, and this time I try defending once Jecht uses ultimate Jecht shot, but apparently that does not reduce damage, and we have a girl down in aisle 3. Well, actually 3 girls down. The third try is the worst so far, as in the first phase he uses Jecht Beam against Tantacles, stoning and shattering him, meaning it's not worthwhile to keep going, and I reset. And on try try 4, it's Orin who gets petrified and shattered. But try 5 goes a lot better. We get everyone switched in, get Super Mighty G up, get to the second phase, and this time I summon Mommy to tank the overdrive for the team, which she does splendidly. Nice job, Mom, and now go to bed. So now it's just a race to get Jack dead before the next one. And as it turns out, I can't. So I die. On try number 6, things are going well, and I once again summon Mommy to take the hit from Jack's overdrive. She goes down, and his overdrive is getting more and more full. On his turn, he fills it up, and it looks like I have 6 turns before he can get completely filled. I use all of those turns to do damage, and I summon Loinstake, who shows me that Jack still has 30,000 HP. So she burns his overdrive, I kill off the pagodas one more time, and if I can just bear down, I know I'll kill him before he kills me. Another shining gem from Riku, and he slaps me hard with his sword. Riku uses a shining gem again, and then finally, a double casted flare from Yuna is enough to finish him off. Women have triumphed, and if you want to watch the hot girls from Final Fantasy VIII do the same, click this video right here. I guarantee you will not regret it. Bye.